Well, hello, and welcome to the Charlotte Mason Enrichment Podcast. I'm your host, Elise Thompson. Hello, I know my name, Elise Thompson. And I am so glad that you are tuning in today. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. We're going to jump right into it. Today, we are talking about a living atmosphere. We're discussing how mistakes and growth go hand in hand in a Charlotte Mason home. And I'm excited to have my friend Rachel Byrd with me to discuss this topic. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, Elise. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well,
Good to see you.
Yes, you too. If you guys haven't met Rachel, Rachel's a dear friend of mine. She's one of the amazing ladies that started the Charlotte Mason community in my hometown. She's a mom of two. She's already graduated her oldest in a few more years before she graduates her baby girl. And so Rachel has just been such a blessing to me and several other moms, and has just tons of wisdom when it comes to Charlotte Mason. She's been a student of her volumes and her work for many years. And so truly a gift to have her on the podcast with us today. So we are, like I said, talking about mistakes. I just, in my parenting day-to-day life, I was noticing, kids make mistakes. I make mistakes. It is just a part of life. But remembering that mistakes are a part of how we learn. And so how do we incorporate that in a Charlotte Mason home with atmosphere being a really big, important part of our education? We're going to start off just diving into that conversation with the principle that Charlotte talks about, that education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. And so, Rachel, I would love to discuss with you kind of what do you feel like Charlotte meant when she talked about atmosphere and why it's just so important to having that living education.
Well, I would like to start out. I'll just read her that initial that principle, one of her 20 principles that talks about atmosphere. And she says, by the saying, education is an atmosphere, it is not meant that a child should be isolated in what may be called a child environment, especially adapted and prepared, but that we should take into account the educational value of his natural home atmosphere, both as regards persons and things, and should let him live freely among his proper conditions. It stultifies a child to bring down his world to the child's level. And what I really like about her understanding and the way she describes atmosphere is that it's really just taking into account reality. What do you have? What has God given you to work with? Whether it is the child themselves, whether it is you as a mother, the people in your home, and then the things as well in your home. And we have a little bit more control over the things in our home than we do the people in our home. But that is my understanding. So atmosphere includes so many things. And but I know some of the things that she talks about is that relationship between the parent and the child, the ability for the child to listen and obey, the ability for the parent to use their authority wisely and well, and really steward that position well. Remember that it's a calling. Um, and I think that's probably the key to understanding your job, is really understanding that it's a stewardship, it's a trust, and that you aren't, if you are a Christian, then it is your job to work with the Holy Spirit, to work with the Lord and what He's called you to do. Remembering that your authority and all of the work that you're doing in your home is through Him and to Him. Like it's for Him. So I think just remembering that has a huge effect on the atmosphere, is knowing like whose we are and who we're working for.
That's really good. That's so good. So with that said, how do we handle mistakes in our home? Like you've been a parent now for not quite 20 years, but close. And kids make mistakes. We make mistakes.
Oh, yes.
How do we handle how do we handle that? Like what should be our mindset as our kids are learning and they're growing and yet they're bumping their head?
Right. Well, this is something that, goodness, I'm still, even now, struggling with. I mean, I think this is just a lifelong learning process. But I wrote down earlier, really, what do mistakes tell us? Mistakes tell us that there's an adjustment to be made.
Yeah, that's good.
Something either in our expectations or in our effort, something is not aligned with reality. And so we have um, something that we feel like is wrong, like a mistake that we have made. And I'm not getting into like sin and objective and all that kind of stuff. But when I'm thinking about mistakes in our home, places where we miss the mark, where things are not happening, um, either our kid makes a mistake, we make a mistake. I think the first thing that we really have to do is we have to um, stop and reflect.
Mm,
I think that's always, it should be. Now, have I always done this? Absolutely not. Um, I've gotten into, sometimes it's like you get in this mood where you see everything wrong and you're trying to correct everything at one time because it's under your skin. And I've really been learning and even reading and um, about reflection and just stop, write it down, put a pin in it. I've heard you say put a pin in it um, to circle back later. But the first thing we need to do is we really need to reflect and not make a knee jerk reaction to a mistake in the moment.
it's really good.
Which is, I mean, goodness, if we could do that, we'd probably be golden. um, but having that remembering, like, pause. This is a time where this mistake is trying to speak to us and tell us
Mhm.
something, and something is not aligning properly. Something is out of alignment. And then it's our job as mothers to a lot of times figure that out, especially when the kids are younger. But as they get older, to kind of walk them through that process of like, oh, this feels really big. This feels really hard, but it's a misalignment somewhere. And we've got to figure out where that is
Mhm.
and, approach it that way as a learning experience.
Yeah, that's so good. I think it is good to pause and to think about how we're viewing this mistake because a lot of times I think I've seen um, that if we're not careful and sometimes we're too quick to respond, we have to be careful to not allow the mistake to be viewed as a part of someone's who they are, like it's a part of their identity, because it's not. It's just some realignment needs to happen, like you said.
Mhm.
Not who you are. That mistake is not a part of you. It's just a learning opportunity. How do you feel like, obviously with reflection, but then as you're going to help bring alignment, how do you feel like um, are some best practices to be able to separate the mistake from the person?
Okay, to separate the mistake. Well, I think I was thinking about this and I was thinking about how when you say there's a misalignment, well, you have to figure out where that misalignment is. And if you have a small child, you are going to be doing this reflection on your own or with, your husband or your spouse or with somebody who can you can bounce ideas off of, which I would highly recommend to have somebody to talk to. Because as mothers, we just are very emotionally involved, and we can get caught up kind of in the negative in our heads. Um, but I think looking at it and really saying what's going on here. Um, are we requiring too much? Are we setting expectations too high? Or maybe we haven't allowed the time that we need for our child to work on. A lot of this really depends on what the mistake is. Um, but really looking at, okay, are my expectations out of alignment? And you can do this with an older child, saying, okay, you messed up here. Was it even, trying to think of the word, was it even a realistic expectation that you were going to do perfectly anyway? I
Mm,
think about my daughter with her nature journal when she was young. She would get really angry because um, she could not draw her leaf the way it looked or paint it the way it looked, even though I told her over and over, like, oh, just try to match the color, or just, like, this is about learning. So
mhm,
sometimes we can have those expectations of ourselves that are outside of reality. They are not realistic expectations. And so the expectation needs to be adjusted, if that's right. Um, Sometimes it is with, and maybe it's the environment sometimes.
mhm,
Maybe our environment is not setting our child up for success. So, if your kid is not getting enough sleep and then they're throwing tantrums every day, that would be an environment adjustment that needs to be made. We need to figure out a way, and sometimes they're sick or other things, and that's just normal and it's just a phase. But if there's something that is consistently causing problems, then I'd say, okay, well, the mother needs to adjust the environment. Like,
mhm,
whatever you need to do to make sure that your kid is um, getting what they need, their basic needs met. So that's adjusting the environment. And there can be many things. Maybe it's a seating arrangement at the table because people are arguing. So there's environment. And then there are the times that it can be. Sometimes I would say the mother is also part of that environment. Maybe it's the mother's heart that is, you are tired, you are stressed, there are things going on. And I think we undervalue how much we lend to our environment in our homes. So sometimes we have to adjust our child's environment by maybe taking a break, getting rest, taking care of ourselves. Um, and then there is the actual, like, if we're talking about a child's mistake, there is a problem with the child. Like, it lies with a lack of maybe effort. There's something that they're not putting enough effort in. Maybe they don't understand well enough, and there needs to be an adjustment there. That's probably the most difficult one because you really have to um, tread with caution because they're a person, and um, making sure that, a lot of the other things, those are the things that are more of the mother's job to align. Um, but sometimes when it is the child, maybe their attitude, um, or something like that in their heart, then that's going to have to be a heart to heart conversation, and something where you're just very honest about um, asking them for, what they're thinking, what's going on in that moment, and letting them know your expectations,
mm,
and then maybe praying with them, maybe doing something like that. But I think just being aware that there are many different parts of um, talking about a mistake. And the goal is to do it with grace. The goal is to keep um, the the value of the child and your relationship with the child number one, which is a great thing if you have pushed pause and you're not um, dealing with this in the moment.
yeah, that's really good. So much there that we could unpack, but, it's really good. Um, I think all of that, like, there's the parts where, okay, there's things that we can, naturally adjust, where it's like, hey, maybe there's um, some tweaks that need to be made to help serve them better so that they can, succeed in whatever it is. Like, you think about schoolwork and, maybe it's we're moving too fast through something and they're
Right.
just not quite getting it. We can we can control that, like we can do that work of recognizing, okay, we need to take a little more time to help you grasp this math concept or this science or whatever. But I think it's different work whenever there's a heart issue and there's a
Yes.
think of the heart that keeps happening. Um, and I'm so grateful for the wisdom that Charlotte Mason brings to remind us that um, this the job of home educating and parenting, that we get to partner with the Holy Spirit, because when we pause to reflect, and we can invite the Holy Spirit in, He can begin to then show us how to address, and really get to the heart of what's happening with that mistake. And I think that's really key. We got 4 kids, so we have 4 kids. We have 4 kids and, one of them was having a hard time with telling the truth. Like, that was a mistake that was reoccurring often, and it was like, "Okay, yeah, this is an issue of a heart." And so stopping to ask the Holy Spirit, like, "How do we address this, and how do we get to the root cause of it with grace?" Because sometimes
Yes.
we want to just bring the hammer and
Right.
and deal with it kind of aggressively, and I'm not saying I think there's a place for that, but, um, I guess, dealing with things aggressively, but also with grace, I think is so important, and I would love to just unpack that, and how we model grace, as we are, you know, helping to bring, resolution and growth, with mistakes.
Hmm. Well, I think when I was listening to you, talking about how we deal with it, there are so many times as parents we're parenting and our reaction is a lot of times out of fear. We see these um, maybe consistent mistakes in our children, and we are afraid because we see maybe in our mind's eye someone else in our family or community or who has done these things and who has it's led to a bad place. And so we come at that from fear. um and it's not always like an unfounded fear, but yet if we're reacting out of fear, um a lot of times it's not a measured or a grace filled reaction. And so yeah, I'm trying to think of how to, like, when we're dealing with our kids, especially if it's something like not telling the truth, um, having grace and being able to deal with that well is really tricky. And in some ways, I think letting them see that opposite of this is what we're hoping for you, and not always coming down and being like, you're gonna have this, no one's gonna trust you, but rephrasing it and reframing it as a we hope and we want people to trust you. There is something that is um really special about having someone whose word that we can believe and understand. And maybe giving some examples of that if you can, right? Of
Mhm.
a time when it was real, something was tricky and someone told you, um and you believed it 100% because you knew that person's character. And so really looking for ways to promote the good, to show them what the opposite of their behavior would look like, and the beauty of that. Almost like it's an inspiration.
Yeah.
oh, this is what we want for you. This
Mhm.
is, why it's upsetting when it doesn't happen. Um, but then also just listening to them as well, and making sure you're listening for the triggers for that behavior as well. Sometimes it could be laziness, right? It could be just, well, I didn't feel like telling the truth, or maybe it's, something like that. But yeah, building that up and giving them the vision for the good characteristic, the good quality, and letting them see kind of like, this is what we're shooting for, and this is why it's beautiful, and it makes a good life, it makes a good family, it makes a good relationship.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's a great way to model grace and to really protect the atmosphere of our homes, because what we don't want is we don't want our kids to be so afraid to mess up and to make mistakes and to feel like that they can't, because um man, that is just a slippery slope to go
It
down to.
is, and it's
Maybe.
such a hard balance because
Right.
you want in when certain things happen, we get those feelings. Like sometimes that's a feeling of pulling us up short when we've missed the mark. Um, but I think teaching them, because you don't want to say it's okay, no, it's never bad, and mistakes are okay. Um, but I think just trying to plug them into, oh, when you feel like that, especially if it's a frustration, something
Mhm,
that really is frustrated and hit their heart. Um, Reminding them that this is the time for themselves, like to pause and to think about it
mhm,
and not be reactionary. I know, some kids, they have some pretty high standards for themselves, or they have, they don't like to be wrong. And it, it's hard for a mom because sometimes you want to avoid all the things they could be wrong on just because it crashes. It's like, oh goodness, here we go.
we we opened a can of worms here.
Oh, yes, we're about to. Oh my god, yeah, like, we did not have time for this today. But it's so important, and I think even as a mother, reframing it when you see this big emotional response, um, as a mother, seeing it as a learning experience.
Mhm,
And every time I walk through this with them, every time that I do it with a bit more grace, or show them how to walk the path out of this, the path out of these emotions, giving them, a way to think about it, reminding them that, yes, sometimes we make mistakes and it is our fault. And we do have to say sorry. And we do, but really checking and walking them through the steps of um, making a mistake in that way that really affects their heart, that really gets them emotionally. We're training them in the path out, the path through, I would say, through that mistake. Like, okay, what did we learn? And then even looking back once it's better and making sure that you notice that. Like,
mm,
oh, I saw that. I saw that was really close to another time when it would have been really easy for you to have the same response. And like you pulled it up, or you did the thing that distracted you and helped you to, run from evil, or just anything like that. Or maybe you made a mistake and I saw you think about, what happened, and saying, you did that well, and really kind of praising the process, like praising that learning of,
mhm.
oh, I see that you are like, this is a skill. Because sometimes we don't see um how we're learning and how we're growing. We just see what is wrong, and
Yeah.
not um how far we've come. So finding, like, really putting up kind of those memorial, it's like the memorial stones. But as a mother, just remembering, just because they're getting better, sometimes it's easy to forget to look at those things.
Mhm.
And so it's like, oh, maybe you write it in your journal, like, how are they doing on this? Like, check back in. And if you've seen growth and progress, comment on it. Make, um, make it a win. Like, grab it and make it a win.
Yeah. I think I hear you saying to praise the process that they're walking through, but also the progress. Like, even if it's not the end goal,
Complete or final, right?
yeah, but they're moving toward it. It is so good because that's encouraging. Like, that's encouraging to anybody to be celebrated, even if it's, we haven't, reached the final destination, but we're making progress. That is so. Okay, well, we're going to press pause on this conversation. It's been so great. We're going to press pause, and we're going to continue this conversation for the next episode. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I want to remind you what Charlotte says, that the only true education is self-education. And so we're never going to stop learning, and we're never going to stop growing. And we will see you on the next episode. Bye.
Thanks, Elise.